The exploration of Vinland. The exploration of Vinland. Over the next few years, 4 expeditions set out, and Leif the Lucky's brother, Thorvald, wintered with 30 men in Vinland in the year 1004. Westward along the coast they found a fine wooded country, and the gleaming white beaches that they had named Furdustrandir, or Wonder Beaches. When their ship was driven ashore on a cape, and the keel was damaged, Thorvald named the place Cape Keelness. Exploring eastwards, they found 3 upturned skin-covered kayaks, and under each 3 sleeping men. The Norsemen killed them all except one who escaped to alert his people. The natives returned to attack the Norse ship, and one of the arrows fatally wounded Thorvald. Dying, he had told his men, "Bury me here with a cross at my head and another at my feet, and ever you shall call it Crossness." Thorstein, another brother, set out to bring home Thorvald's body, but his boat tossed about all summer in the stormy sea and finally returned to Greenland, where Thorstein died of the plague. His widow Gudrid married an Icelandic trader, Thorfinn Karlsevni, and they spent 3 winters in Vinland with 250 Greenlanders, including Eric's illegitimate daughter Freydis, and assorted livestock brought in their 3 ships. The first winter was hard, and they tried to add to their meager rations by feasting off a whale beached in a storm, though its meat made them sick. But amid their privations, Gudrid gave birth to Snorri, the first white child born in North America, and according to the sagas, the birth took place in the house built by Leif the Lucky. Exploring up and down the coast, the Norsemen landed at Hop, or Landlocked Bay, where they found wild grapes and wild wheat, and such an abundance of halibut that they caught them by simply digging trenches along the shore. Peaceful trading with the Skraelings, or natives, began when the Norsemen gave them goat's milk and clothing. But the mood soon turned to one of hostility and armed clashes. In one skirmish, Freydis panicked the foe by striking her naked breast with her sword, but the Norsemen, outnumbered, fled to Greenland. The final attempt to colonize Vinland was that made in 1014 by the redoubtable Freydis and 2 Norse brothers, leading a joint expedition of some 60 men and a few women in 2 ships. After reaching Vinland, Freydis turned on her partners, resolving to seize their ships and belongings. She instigated the murder of 30 men and herself slew their women. Thus, with a blood-stained battle-axe, ended the recorded history of Norse settlements in North America. The vague geography given in the sagas and some contradictions between the narratives have led to controversy over their authenticity and about the location of the sites described. The problem has been further obscured by claims for some such dubious Norse relics as the Kensington runestone and the Newport Stone Tower, allegedly dug up 3 miles from Kensington, Minnesota by a Swedish farmer in 1898. The 200-pound Kensington stone bore a runic inscription which, when translated, purported to be a message from 30 Viking explorers in 1362. Although it has been rejected as a fraud by Scandinavian experts, the stone still has its supporters. The tower in Newport's Toro Park is a 26 cylindrical structure, a 26-foot cylindrical structure with 8 arches resting on columns said to date from a Viking settlement on Rhode Island. Before we continue reading on, I'll read the inscription for the tower and the inscription for the ships we read that we saw from earlier. I'll read the ships first. You can't see the words, but I'll read it for you. Phoenician galley, that's the one in the upper left. Mastering the seas. This stoutly built ship was 200 feet or more in length, with a very high deck and curved prow. The body of the ship was of cypress and the oars of oak. The great cedar mast carried a huge square sail. The Phoenicians were the first to have their merchant fleet convoyed by warships. The bulwarks of these warships were hung with bronze shields, and the long tapering prows were sheathed in bronze or iron. The Phoenician galley could carry up to 250 men, including the slaves who manned the 60 oars. Norse Nar. That's Knarr. Broad beam merchant ship. That's the one on the upper right, riding high in the water. The Nar was a solid, dependable ship for long voyages on the high seas. The mast was amidships and carried a square wooden sail. It was a single row of 15 to 20 oars and a crew of 35 to 40 men. The Vikings' fighting longship, or Drakkar, Drakkar, though slender and faster, was better suited to coastal and river navigation. That's a Portuguese caravel. Portuguese caravel, with its upswept hull and rounded stern, the caravel was designed for ocean voyages. It had 3 masts and an enormous mainsail, which allowed the ship to travel up to 80 nautical miles in 24 hours. The caravel was about 100 feet long, and by the end of the 15th century, ships of advanced design carried a small forecastle. The navigators of this period had compasses, but still used the sun and stars to guide them. And the last on the ancient right is the ancient Chinese junk. This drawing is based on a model found in a Han tomb of the 1st century AD. The 60-foot hull, so almost 2,000 years ago, was of pine and had 7 watertight compartments. The cedar mast was 50 feet high and carried a sail of woven rushes. A mushroom-shaped roof covered the large aft cabin. No metal at all was used in its construction. Although a clumsy-looking craft, the junk could in fact sail as many as 100 nautical miles in 24 hours. So it was faster than the Portuguese caravel. And now we're going to get back to reading about the stone tower. Though firmly placed in colonial times by archaeologists, the tower, like the stone, is still put forward as evidence by those who believe in Norse penetration in New England and the Middle West. Modern authorities now agree on the location of Helluland, Markland, and Vinland, the 3 main landfalls mentioned in the sagas. Helluland is Baffin Island, just 200 miles across the Davis Strait from Greenland's western settlement. Markland, with its wondrous white beaches, is on the coast of Labrador, where the sands stretch for 30 miles. The case for the northern tip of Newfoundland, as Vinland has been virtually clinched by Helga Ingstad's excavations at Leon Meadows from 1961 to 1968. So that's L'Anse AUX Meadows, Meadows. Ingstad, a Norwegian authority on the Viking Age, was drawn to Newfoundland by early documents such as Adam of Bremen's description of Vinland in 1075, and an Icelandic map of 1590, which was the first to show the 3 Norse landfalls. He pinpointed Leon Meadows as Leif site by its physical features: the strait between Cape Bald and Belle Isle, the low wooded hills, and Black Duck Brook winding from a lake where salmon spawned, through grassy meadows into a bay. Further along the coast looms Cape Porcupine, Thorvald's Cape Keelness. Karlsevne's Hop may be simply Leif's own settlement. With his wife Anne Stine, S-T-I-N-E, an Icelandic and American archaeologist, Ingstad uncovered the sites of 6 houses built of turf and timber, the largest being 70 feet long and 55 feet wide, and carbon dated to around 81,000. It is similar in plan to Eric's dwellings at Brattahlid in Greenland, which have also been excavated. Brattahlid. Most remains of the Norse occupation would have rotted away in the acid soil, but Ingstad's team did find a bronze ring-headed pen, a typical Norse clasp to fasten a mantle, and a soapstone spindle whorl identical to those used in Greenland for spinning wool. About 300 yards from the site stood a number of cairns, with which bearings of the sun may have been taken. Iron slag and charcoal deposits gave evidence of ironworking, using nearby bog iron, though the natives of this period, Algonquin Indians and Eskimos, had no knowledge of this craft. Even the wild wheat, single quote, has been identified as lime grass, a long wild grass looking like wheat, and from the seeds of which flour could be made. Leon Almedos provides a neat solution in all except one respect. For grapevines did not grow in Newfoundland, although the grapes may have been the red and black currants, cranberries, and gooseberries which abound there. Ingstad favors an alternative meaning of grazing land for the Norse ven. He points out that nowhere in the sagas is Vinland connected with grapes. Ingstad's explanation hardly fits Leif's explicit description of loading his afterboat with grapes. Sporadic contacts continue between Greenland and Vinland. Medieval bills of lading in Bergen refer to black bear, sable, and marten furs, none of which are found in Greenland but may have been re-exported from Vinland. In 1490, no European ship had called at Greenland for 80 years, and its people had vanished. No one knew where they had gone, but a Portuguese expedition in Newfoundland in 1500 returned with a possible answer, that they had emigrated to Vinland. Gaspar Corte Real returned from this expedition with 57 natives, whom he described as white. It may be that these, a single quote again, it may be that these were descendants of the Norsemen who had gone native, intermarried with Indians, and taken to living in caves and wearing animal skins. The Corte Real's voyage, the Portuguese achieved their first landfall in North America. They were such indefatigable sailors that this success was long overdue. For many years they had sailed all over the Atlantic. They discovered the Azores in 1432, and a feasible sea route from the Indies in 1488, to be traversed 10 years later by Vasco da Gama. In 1500, while en route to the Indies, Pedro Alvarez Cabral discovered Brazil by accident. And in that same year, Fernandez de Lavrador, or landowner, rediscovered Greenland. Portuguese writers, however, assert that the court of Lisbon kept discoveries quiet to avoid encroachments by rival nations, especially Spain, and even claim that their navigators reached America before Columbus. They cite as evidence a voyager by Gaspar Corte Real's father, Joao, so it's Joa with the tilde above it, O, Vaz Corte Real, in 1472 to the land of Cod, or Newfoundland, and the Labrador's claim to have started on a 3-year tour of the Atlantic in April 1492, in which he beat Columbus across by a few days. However, all that seems certain are the Portuguese discoveries of 1500. Samuel Eliot Morison has exhaustively contested the whole theory of secret claims to pre-Columbian landfalls in the West, pointing out caustically that the only evidence of a Portuguese policy of secrecy with regard to the discovery of America is a lack of evidence of a Portuguese discovery of America. The Portuguese historian Dr. Antonio Biao argues that the existence of other islands beyond the Azores was known or suspected in Portugal. It was in the wake of these indications that Columbus sailed, and it was Columbus who carried off the prize, reaching the New World in September to October 1492, when he was 33 days out from the Canaries. Ironically, the Florentine Amerigo Vespucci, after whom America was named, made no discoveries but owed his fame to a genius for self-advertisement, claiming falsely that he had reached the American mainland before Columbus. Amerigo did sail as navigator on a Portuguese ship to explore the coast of Brazil, and his account of the voyage, Mundus Novus, gained a wide readership. Impressed by Amerigo's exploits, the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller seized on his name to affix the Latin form America on a 1507 map of the New World. But Columbus's landfall was no accident. His journey was accurately recorded, and his achievement led to the first permanent colonization of the Americas. It is hardly surprising, then, that history credits him with discovering the New World. This last image, that whole thing was by Byron Longman. Leif the Norseman and his comrades left Greenland to look for land which they had glimpsed on a previous voyage, and reached a wooded region with sandy beaches stretching as far as the eye could see. They landed, and Leif named the country Markland, meaning land of forests. This part of Canada is today called Labrador. They then put out to sea again and sailed southwards to Newfoundland, where they built shelters and spent the winter. That'll do it. The exploration of Vinland. The exploration of Vinland. Over the next few years, 4 expeditions set out, and Leif the Lucky's brother, Thorvald, wintered with 30 men in Vinland in the year 1004. Westward along the coast they found a fine wooded country, and the gleaming wounded Thorvald. Dying, he had told his men, "Bury me here with a cross at my head and another at my feet, and ever you shall call it crossness." Thorstein, another brother, set out to bring home Thorvald's body, but his boat tossed about all summer in the stormy sea and finally returned to Greenland, where Thorstein died of the plague. His widow Gudrid married an Icelandic trader, Thorfinn Karlsevni, and they spent 3 winters in Vinland with 250 Greenlanders, including Eric's illegitimate daughter Freydis, and assorted livestock brought in their 3 ships. The first winter was hard, and they tried to add to their meager rations by feasting off a whale beached in a storm, though its meat made them sick. But amid their privations, Gudrid gave birth to Snorri, the first white child born in North America, on white beaches that they had named Furdustrandir, or Wonder Beaches. When their ship was driven ashore on a cape, and the keel was damaged, Thorvald named the place Cape Keelness. Exploring eastwards, they found 3 upturned skin-covered kayaks, and under each 3 sleeping men. The Norsemen killed them all except one who escaped to alert his people. The natives returned to attack the Norse ship, and one of the arrows fatally, and according to the sagas, the birth took place in the house built by Leif the Lucky. Exploring up and down the coast, the Norsemen landed at Hop, or Landlocked Bay, where they found wild grapes and wild wheat, and such an abundance of halibut that they caught them by simply digging trenches along the shore. Peaceful trading with the Skraelings, or natives, began when the Norsemen gave them goat's milk and clothing.